What's going on, guys? This is Jake at That Fit Friend, and today we're going to be talking about why lifting, squatting, and deadlifting is probably not the best idea in running shoes. So if you're a beginner who is just getting into strength training, then you might be wondering, why can't I wear my running shoes for lifting? Is that a good idea? Is that a bad idea? What type of shoes should I wear? So in this video, I'm going to talk about why running shoes are kind of suboptimal for lifting, especially with deadlifts and squats, and then I'll talk about some suitable options to look into instead. So the first reason why running shoes are suboptimal for lifting is their midsole construction. So as you can see, both of these models up here have pretty thick midsoles. Now, how does that translate to lifting? Well, if you are trying to really create a bunch of stability through the floor, you're gonna have a tough time doing that in something like a running shoe. This midsole is gonna compress, it's not gonna allow you to fully ground those feet, and at times you can potentially lose your balance when training with running shoes. The way I like to conceptualize it and explain it is imagine the squat. We want the foot to be fully grounded and stable when we are lowering down and then standing back up, and if we're using a running shoe where we're kind of uneven or we might be losing our balance or compressing, we're basically building a house on shaky, muddy ground. We want to have a stable base that we can then lift through to maintain better balance and force production through the floor. So our first reason is that the thicker midsoles in running shoes can hinder some of your stability and your overall performance due to them compressing under different loads in different exercises. The second reason, which kind of piggybacks off of the first reason, which is the thicker midsole, is that running shoes have high stack heights. So stack height means the amount of material that separates the foot from the floor. Now, why can that be problematic for lifting? Well, when we're training, ideally, again, we want to be able to ground the feet. And if we have a stack height that's really high, it's going to be really hard to bias how we're putting force into the foot in different areas and fully feel the ground under the foot. So imagine I was using this Adidas for squatting. If I wanted to ground the big toe or find my big toe and really ground my forefoot, it's going to be really hard to do so because we can see that the toe box in this model and the forefoot actually curve up a little bit. So it's going to be really difficult for me to find my big toe and ground that portion of the foot in this running shoe. Even in this Noble model, we don't have as sharp of a curve up here in the forefoot. Even if I tried to find my big toe, it's gonna be really tough for me to do because we have so much material separating the foot from the floor that we're gonna lose out on some of our potential to actually feel the floor under us. Now, in the context of deadlifts, a higher stack height is gonna add to the total range of motion that we need to lift the weight, which can actually be problematic for anybody who is trying to drill down consistent mechanics and really focus on their total range of motion when they are progressing their deadlifts. The third reason is their outsole construction. So most running shoes will have a mix of rubber and foam outsoles. So basically they'll have rubber on certain parts and then they'll have an exposed layer where that midsole foam is showing to the ground. So as you can see on this Adidas model, we have foam throughout this midfoot. If I look at this Hoka, we also have foam throughout the midfoot here exposed and back here on the heel and kind of up here in the forefoot. Now, why is that problematic for training? Well, we talked about how we want to be able to really ground the feet when lifting. And when we're talking about doing things like cross training, we want generally a fully rubber outsole to provide us with a lot of different traction. So if you are in the business of training in your running shoes, you may be limited on how you can actually move when it comes to multi-directional activity and being able to really grip the floor on different gym surfaces. So it's kind of one of those things where it's kind of just hedging your bets. You obviously don't want a ton of exposed foam when you're training, especially throughout the outsole, because you want to be able to maximize how much you can grip the floor under you. The fourth reason is that when we use running shoes for other styles of training, so let's say we're using our running shoes for things like cross training, they don't have construction features designed to help them out with durability. So generally we're gonna have running shoes with really light upper constructions. They may not be the best for resisting friction and they could break down a little bit faster. Plus, when we start to lift in running shoes, we'll actually start to compress that midsole a little bit, which can then actually hinder some of their performance when we're trying to run. So if you want your running shoes to just last longer in general, I would say use them only for the type of training they are designed to do. And plus, when you get a really good pair of training shoes on top of the running shoes you have, and you limit their use for only the forms of training you're using them with, they should actually last you longer in the long run because you're not going to be breaking down your shoes doing things that they're not designed to do. So you're ready to ditch your running shoes when you're lifting, deadlifting, squatting. What types of shoes should you use instead? Well, what I would suggest looking into, especially if you're somebody who is just getting into different styles of training, squatting, deadlifting, and you want a shoe that can kind of tackle a little bit of everything, look into cross-training shoes. There are a ton of different cross-training shoes out there designed for tackling different tasks. I have a ton of content on my channel talking about all of the different cross training shoes, talking about the best cross training shoes, when you should wear them, etc. So I'm not going to dive in too deep with cross training shoes in general, but 3 things that cross training shoes will have in common that running shoes won't include: number 1, midsole constructions that can be both versatile and stable enough to support lifting, but also not feel super uncomfortable for things like HIIT and doing classes. So this is kind of like that best of all worlds kind of shoe. When you're in the gym, you could use it for a little bit of everything. The second thing that they're going to all have in common is some level of upper construction durability. So a lot of different cross training shoes will have reinforced upper constructions to resist things like rope climbs or other things that can break down the shoe. So if you're dragging the toes in burpees, whatever it might be, the uppers in these models will do a better job at resisting friction over a long period of time. The third thing that they're all going to pretty much have in common is that they'll all have outsoles that are designed to provide traction for multi-directional activity and for lifting. So not every single cross training shoe is going to be fully rubber, but as we can see, like with this Under Armour Tri-Base Rain 3, we do have some exposed midsole here, but it is very limited in nature. And on this React Metcon Turbo, we do have a little bit of like a plastic TPU wrap exposed here on the midfoot, but where you want traction the most, aka up here in the forefoot and the heel, we have it covered. So 3 things cross training shoes generally have in common include: number 1, midsoles that are both versatile and stable enough to tackle a ton of different activities; number 2, upper constructions that are fairly durable in nature; and number 3, include outsoles that are pretty much all rubber to provide traction for multi-directional activity. All right guys, that wraps up this video on why running shoes are suboptimal for lifting, squatting, and deadlifting. I would highly suggest looking into a good pair of cross training shoes if you have been using your running shoes for your lifting, and if you invest in both and take good care of them, they should actually go the distance and last longer than if you're using one to kind of tackle a little bit of everything. Shoes are designed for very specific tasks at hand, and if we limit their use for those specific tasks, they will perform better across the board for us. If you have any questions on this video, hit me in the comments below, and as always guys, drop a like on the video, subscribe to the channel. I'll see you guys in the next one.